Hello and welcome to this afternoon's TARGETjobs webinar on using the festive season to your advantage. I'm Rachel, I'm one of the TARGETjobs editors, and I'm here today to help our panel moderate the discussion a little bit and try and make sure we answer as many questions as possible. With that in mind, before we get started, please do make use of the chat box to the right-hand side of your screen. If you'd like to ask a question to the panel, we will get to these towards the end of the session, so pop your question in there. If you see somebody's asked a question that you like, upvote it so we can see what the most popular questions are. We're going to try and get through as many as we can today. Hopefully we get through them, but we might not get through them all. So if you upvote, it's a good way for us to see what you really want to ask. Just try to keep your questions relevant to today's topic of using the festive season to your advantage, and keep it as broad as you can so that the answer helps as many other listeners. And before we get started on the questions, I just wanted to quickly thank our panellists for joining us today and just introduce them a little bit before they introduce themselves. So we have Jane Wilkinson from the Department for Education. We have Claire Bainen from the Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We have Joshua Carney from GSK, and we have Sarah Scadding from Deutsche Bank. So I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves a little bit for me. So if I go clockwise on my screen, Joshua, could we start with you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hi everyone. As was mentioned, my name's Josh. I work for GSK. Really pleased to be here today. Great to see so many of you on here as well. It should be quite a nice topic, I think. So to introduce myself, I work in the early talent recruitment team at GSK. So our team responsible for recruiting for our apprenticeships, our industrial placement and summer placement programs, and the graduate scheme, the Future Leaders program at GSK. So GSK is one of the largest healthcare companies in the world. So we've got pharmaceutical, vaccines, and consumer healthcare products. A lot of things you may have seen or used yourself, seen in Boots, that kind of thing. So we've got graduate and placement roles across your kind of breadth of the business. So yeah, looking forward to chatting to you all a little bit over the next hour or so.
Perfect, thanks Joshua. And Sarah, you next please.
Hi everybody, my name is Sarah. I work on the early careers recruitment team at Deutsche Bank. I've been at Deutsche Bank 12 weeks, so I was onboarded virtually, but been working in early careers for 9 years. So kind of over that time, hired lots of interns and graduates. Deutsche Bank has a range of opportunities for whatever year of study you're in across lots of divisions within the bank. Yeah, that's me.
Lovely. And Jane?
Hello, I used to be a teacher, but now work with the Getting to Teaching service. So we help people who are applying for teacher training courses, whether they're in the first, second or third year at university, or if they're looking to change career. And so we do a lot of on-campus work, I think, so we kind of hear what a lot of students are worried about, and so therefore can tailor the support that we offer to people who are looking to get into teaching to suit their own needs.
Perfect. And last but not least, Claire.
Hi everyone, my name's Claire Bainen. I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. My role is early careers, so focus on the attraction to our opportunities, which are graduate opportunities, internships, apprenticeships. We work with the local colleges and schools to really kind of aspire students to carry on their education and look at other routes to talent with them. We have a campus pro manager program, so yeah, looking after a real broad spectrum of opportunities. And Enterprise Rent-A-Car is a mobility provider, so we are a global organisation, and ultimately we want to make sure that we are mirroring the communities in terms of the diversity of our workforce, so mirroring the communities that we operate in, and that's really important to us too. So welcome everyone, nice to meet you all.
Great, thank you all for introducing yourselves, and thank you again for joining us. And so my first question really today is, and I'm going to go around each of you for this one, is your organisation recruiting for roles over the festive season and into 2021? Claire, if you wouldn't mind going first this time.
Yes, of course. Well, the short answer is yes. We have all of our opportunities currently on our website. So we posted all opportunities on the 1st of December. We did have some roles ready to go prior to December, but now is the time where all our jobs are out. So we do have our internship opportunities. We also have our graduate opportunities for summer start, so any graduate that can start from May to September next year. And we also have opportunities for graduates who have graduated and can start really as soon as possible into the business. So we will not be slowing down over Christmas, and in fact, we probably expect to see quite a few applications.
Perfect. How about you, Sarah?
Sorry, the typical stuck on mute. How many times a day do we all hear that, guys? Yes, we are still recruiting. We have kind of lots of opportunities. Some will close towards the end of December, some will remain open because we know some candidates kind of take the downtime over the Christmas period to get their applications in. So I definitely say keep an eye on your website. The recruitment activity itself might slow down a little bit as members of the team obviously take time off over the festive period, but we are absolutely kind of still hiring. Our first year opportunities, the deadline isn't till the end of January anyway. So yes, that's my answer.
And Joshua, is it the same for you?
Yeah, so we do have a variety of roles that are open now, including quite a range of different year-long industrial placement roles. As I said before, across kind of the breadth of the business, we've got roles in R&D, within business operations, within communications. So no matter what you're kind of studying, there should be something that will hopefully be a good fit. We're also going to be opening in sort of late January, February sort of time, a range of summer placement programs as well. So looking after Christmas across marketing, tech, research and development. The majority of our graduate programs, so our Future Leaders program is our kind of best known graduate program. The majority of those kind of opened in October and mostly have closed, though we do have some other kind of options for graduates that open kind of throughout the spring, which we call kind of direct entry positions, which are simply kind of jobs at the right level for a graduate coming into the organization, and those sorts of positions are likely to be opening across the springtime. I say right now the industrial placements are probably the main thing that we have open right now.
Perfect. And then Jane, what about people who are looking to apply for teaching positions?
So in order to become a teacher, you need to have completed a postgraduate teacher training course. And so therefore, we are still recruiting over the Christmas period for people who are looking to start courses in September of 2021. People would do their teacher training course within an academic year, and even before you actually graduate from that postgrad course, you are actually qualified and ready to start applying for teaching jobs. And more often than not, people have their position before they've completed their training. So we are supporting people applying right now, and we are advising some people, depending on what the subject they're looking to teach, to do that much sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you. Well, as good as it sounds like, there's definitely plenty for students to be looking into and applying for over the festive season and the coming months after it. So the next question really is, how can students best use the time that they've got in the next few weeks to be researching graduate job vacancies and organisations? Sarah, do you have any tips to start with?
Absolutely, yes. It's definitely important that you get some downtime over Christmas, so you can kind of recharge and relax, but it's also an opportunity to put yourself in a really good place for next year. So I think it depends on where you are in your application process, or kind of what preparation you want to be doing. But I would definitely, personally, I would set out kind of like a schedule for myself kind of during those days. So even if you do an hour a day, it would be amazing how much kind of that time accumulates throughout. I personally love a lie-in, so I would probably schedule mine around lunchtime. So I'd have my lie-in, kind of get up and then maybe do an hour. So maybe it's if you haven't applied yet and you are, say for example, you're a first year student, you're looking, really kind of getting down which places you want to apply to and kind of working on those applications. So, you know, working on your cover letter, making sure that your CV looks fabulous and as good as it can. If you're further along in the process, so you know that you've submitted applications and that actually in the new year they might start coming through and you might be meeting people, then I would use the time to think about answers to common competency questions. So really know that your CV inside out, make sure that everything you've included on it, you've reflected on, and you know what you would do differently, how well it went, what skills you learned from it, and focus on those competencies. So at Deutsche Bank, we have about 7 or 8 competencies that we share with you, that they are what you're going to be assessed on. So you can start getting your examples ready. So if they ask me about teamwork, great, I'm going to talk about this example. If they ask me about me being proactive, I'm going to talk about this example. You can really kind of gather those examples up and, you know, be able to talk about them. What I often do when I'm preparing for an interview is I say my answers out loud. So I walk around my flat, okay, if they ask me about teamwork, and I say my answer. And that to me is kind of lets me know where there's gaps or if I'm adding in too much information that's not relevant. So kind of making sure I use that star. So I would say it's a great time, rest, recharge, but kind of build a schedule to every day just start chipping away, you know, chipping away at that preparation. And there's lots of preparation you can do depending on which stage you're at.
Can I just add in there, Rachel, just when you're looking, and I completely agree with Sarah, using that downtime and having some time to relax is super important to recharge your batteries, because you know, I can imagine you've been all in front of many screens for many hours learning, and it's important you have that break. What I would say, be strategic. You know, you want to try and look for the opportunity that's going to work for you, and ensure that you are following all the platforms, for example, that your careers team might be using to advertise jobs, because they will ultimately have access to all employers they work with. And I know that they're posting all the time on the different platforms about opportunities for different employers and employers that you may not have thought about working for. So, you know, you might have a psychology degree, but did you ever think about working in business? And, you know, just research those opportunities. Don't pigeonhole yourself into maybe a certain area you think you should be applying to, when actually there's a lot more for you out there. So for example, our program, we don't ask for a certain degree discipline. We're very open. You don't need a business degree. So be really open-minded to looking at those opportunities. I would certainly say have a LinkedIn profile if you haven't already, and use that to kind of start building your network too, because from building a network, you will then see more and more opportunities online. And I think, and like Sarah said, then it's really being strategic and start planning how you're going to stand out from everybody else during the application process.
Perfect. Thanks for jumping in. And Joshua, do you have anything you'd like to add to that in terms of how students can use this time to research or build on their application skills?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say anything a million miles away from what Claire and Sarah have said, actually, because I know it's probably been quite a strange and quite stressful semester for everybody. So yeah, primarily using that time to recharge, relax, and yeah, and have a nice time, I think is probably the first thing that I'd recommend. I would kind of touch upon what Claire kind of mentioned in terms of using that career service at your universities as much as you can before you head home for the holidays, or even when you're back at home. We've got well, every year we ask the graduates, the placement students that come and join GSK, like how they heard about us, where they actually found out about the roles, what really helped them with their application. The career service is always kind of the top choice, the top reason. So I'd thoroughly recommend you all make the most of that, because there's some great resources there, even in terms of what they're actually advertising through their platforms, but also the different partnerships that they know, and the different roles that the career services all have. I think is very, very important. And also in terms of what Sarah mentioned, when I'm preparing and trying to balance kind of applications and, well, in my case, having weekends, it is very important, I think, to have that kind of clear distinction between now is a time where I'm actually going to be looking for careers, looking for jobs, going over my CV, and now it's time to relax and watch TV or something like that. Because I often find you can find yourself, well, in my position anyway, sitting on the sofa watching a film, and you're looking at, well, work emails, or you're looking at jobs that you might want to apply to, and I think it's quite important to have that clear kind of distinction. So making that schedule, as was mentioned, I think is quite useful, and I certainly will. I think that'll help you recharge a little bit and have a clear distinction between, you know, studying or working or looking for jobs, and then actually, you know, relaxing and recharging.
Great. And Jane, if I could come to you, is there anything you wanted to build on top of everything that's already been said, if there's anything left?
So one of the things that we do within the early engagement program is work with people on their transferable skills, that while they will put you in a great position to become a teacher, they are also applicable to most other types of industry, because it's things around being able to build trust in each other, having empathy, developing emotional intelligence, all of the kind of things that are considered, I suppose, soft skills, but actually is absolutely crucial for a working environment and working as a team, as well as some of the kind of more tangible fact-based things in around things like safeguarding, for example. We've got a whole kind of portfolio of skills that people can dip in and out of and just kind of upskill themselves, either for an application for teacher training or indeed for any other type of industry or profession that they would like to go into. And I think it's really important to be very aware of the soft skills, because ultimately you could be the best scientist or the best engineer or the best whatever, but if you can't build relationships with the people with whom you're working, then you are going to be seriously disadvantaged.
Great. And I think that leads into a really nice point, Jane, that as well as applying for and researching organisations this festive period, there's other things that students can be doing right to kind of build their employability, to build their networks. I mean, I remember somebody, when I was at university, somebody said, use the festive season to network, go to your family parties, ask people about their careers. And sadly, we might not get that same experience this year. Is there anything you might recommend as an alternative this season?
Yeah, I would say I still utilise the societies that you may be part of. I understand there's a lot of societies that struggle to maybe move forward during a pandemic because they can't meet in person, but I've certainly been part of having working really closely with an Actors UK, for example. They have achieved so much virtually, and I think it's just keeping involved in your network and being part of any opportunities that you have, because yes, I feel that the societies I've engaged with are still very proactive, are still engaging, albeit virtually, and the dynamic of that might look different, but just use those opportunities still to be active and be involved. And very often they might have guest employers come into their sessions or different mentors, and I think you learn a lot from those sessions. So I just think don't take your foot off the gas there.
Great. Joshua, do you have any tips on how students can work on their wider employability if they get chance?
Well, I think attending these sorts of sessions is a really good place to start, and it's something that most other students probably aren't doing. So I think, I know you mentioned that there might not be so much kind of face-to-face parties and that sort of thing where you can kind of network in person, but signing up and coming along to these sorts of events, which I don't know, maybe they were running, or maybe they weren't running in this kind of format in previous years, but it's certainly a lot easier to attend multiple kind of online webinars like this. I know GTI have done a few. I'm sure there are other organizations doing these similar sorts of things. So actually being proactive and going out to these sorts of things is a great place to start. So I'm sure you're going to be in a far better position than a lot of your peers who maybe haven't been that proactive in coming along to these sorts of things. So I think make the most of the fact that a lot more things are virtual, and you can attend more events like this and learn a lot more from a wider range of people without having to travel, you know, halfway across the country or whatever it might be. So yeah, there is, I mean, it's been a tricky time for everyone, but the benefits in that you can attend more events like this, yeah, hopefully will be useful anyway.
Perfect. And Sarah or Jane, I know Jane, you started us off on this theme, so no pressure, but Sarah, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Sure, you could also use this time to kind of build your knowledge. So I guess one thing is if you don't really know what you want to do, a good place to start would be, thinking about all the skills that you have and thinking about kind of, when was the last time you lost track of time because you were so engaged in a topic, kind of what skills do you like doing? But also it could be, say, for example, you're interested in finance, you're interested, for example, in what Deutsche Bank do, but you haven't come from a finance degree. So you might be thinking, I'm not sure that my finance is going to be at the level that it should be. And we absolutely want people from different degree backgrounds, and our interviewers are able to kind of tailor the types of questions depending on experience, because we're trying to hire for potential. But you could also use this time to kind of build that knowledge, to say, okay, I do think I'm interested in the finance industry. What are some things I can do that I can talk about at interview to say, look, I haven't come from a finance background, but I've been listening to these podcasts, which I found really interesting. I'm really interested in, I don't know, I was going to say gym's fitness. And so actually I've started to follow a fitness stock on the stock market and see how things going on in the news. We'll kind of use that time to make sure that you're kind of keeping up with what's going on in the news. So there's kind of lots of stuff that you could be doing to kind of, gather, to arm yourself for when it does come to interviews. Lots of really interesting stuff to talk about.
I think a lot of interviews tend to be competency based, so it's okay kind of having lists of things that you're good at or things that you know, but I think it's really important to be able to back up that claim that you're making. And so therefore I think, going back to things that Sarah was saying earlier in the discussion, having a selection or a portfolio of examples where you have practiced on the stock market, or taught people or mentored people, or worked in a particular business, even though it's not actually related, a lot of the skills can be transferable, and I think it's important not to underplay that.
Yeah, I just think that's really important, as when we've gone through our recruitment process so far this year, we've seen that's where students probably fall down the most, is really identifying actually what skills do they have, what's transferable, and how can they communicate that to a recruiter. Sarah mentioned the competencies. We have 6 competencies at Enterprise. If any student asked me our competencies, I would tell you. So now, when you know the competencies of an organisation, you can almost think about what type of questions you're going to get asked. So we have customer service. You will get asked a question about customer service. We have leadership. You will be asked a question about leadership. So have those examples ready to go, prepared. There's platforms like Shortlist.me that you can practice a virtual interview on. So again, you can maybe see how you come across on camera and how you answer the questions, and see yourself recorded back with a recruiter. It's really helpful. So there's lots of other resources there to help, but I would say that's great advice, because we do find that when we're interviewing, students might mention some experience they have, but then it's not on the application. So then just making sure your application mirrors your actual experience and your transferable skills.
Perfect. Yeah, this is all fantastic. Thank you guys for sharing. I think it's so important to remember that, but there's so much you can do over the Christmas period to help give yourself an advantage. Sarah mentioned podcasts, there's things like online courses. There's so much we can be doing to better ourselves and put ourselves in a really good position. And like Claire mentioned, practicing for interviews. So I hope the students listening are picking up some really good ideas for what they can be doing over the coming weeks. And I just wanted to, looking at the chat box, one thing that's come up is LinkedIn. And I know you mentioned it earlier, Claire, and I think that is a really good alternative for online networking. Does anybody have any tips in particular for how somebody can get themselves on LinkedIn and maybe they've not even started, help on building a profile or reaching out to people?
Don't mind going first with a quick kind of LinkedIn tip, I suppose. Is that at GSK we've got about 350-ish current placement students. We've got about 100 odd current people on our graduate program. all of which are always posting on LinkedIn or similar about the different projects they're getting involved with, the different things that they're doing, the different parts of their role, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. They're really, really frequently posting very valuable stuff like that on LinkedIn. So I always recommend, if you are applying for a role, if you are coming to an assessment center with us or an interview or whatever it might be, do have a look on LinkedIn. Try and find who's doing that role currently. It's usually fairly straightforward to find by simply typing in the actual role within GSK, and you can find it fairly easily. And it also gives you a real good insight into what actually that position is going to be like, what you're actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. It's a good thing to mention in the interview. If you've got any questions, you can talk about, oh, well, I saw the current placement student has got involved with this, and that's something that really jumps out at me as why I'm interested in coming along and joining the program, or something like that. So I'd certainly recommend that's a really good and useful thing, I think, to do on LinkedIn in particular.
Yeah, I would say definitely follow those organisations that you want to research more and are interested in. When you connect with people, maybe just put a little note in the message to say why you're connecting, because I think that's quite helpful for recruiters or maybe students already on placement with organisations to understand why you're connecting with them. And just be active on LinkedIn. And I've done a few webinars where students have connected with me. They've then gone on to ask me questions, and they're the students that stand out. They're the ones that I put to the top of the priority list and kind of ensure that they're getting what they need to prepare for their upcoming interview. So absolutely 100%, it's such a great tool.
I would just add, kind of be strategic with it. I think you're kind of told to grade your network, and people think, oh my goodness, I have to get on LinkedIn and start growing my network. It's a great useful tool, but think about who do you want to be connecting with and why do you want to be connecting with them. And then if you are requesting something from them, again, be quite specific. So I have someone contact me going, I'd love to know more about your graduate program. And I'm like, I could talk about the grad program all day long. Make our jobs really easy. If you're requesting time from somebody, make it really obvious what you want. What is it that you want specifically to know? What can I help you with that you haven't been able to get from our website, that you haven't been able to get elsewhere? So I say that's one tip. The other tip is, don't be disheartened. People don't have to accept your request. Most often not, they do. And I would also say, for kind of like an insight into what you might be going into, is I would always look for alumni from your university, because that can often be quite a nice way to see, oh, I'm studying at X, I see you also studied there and you now work at Deutsche Bank. Would you have 10 minutes for a call to discuss, I'd love to know more about your day-to-day work, or whatever it may be. So that can be quite a nice way in as well, kind of that alumni connection. But I would say think about who you want to connect with and why, and then think specifically, what is it that you would like to get from that connection. And even if it's just, I'd like to have you in my network, as I explore my graduate career opportunities, absolutely fine.
Perfect. How about you, Jane? Do you have any thoughts on LinkedIn or similar?
We don't tend to use it because we find that obviously you've got to have a professional qualification to teach, and so therefore quite often network is done in a very kind of face-to-face way and very personable way, I think. But I would say that when you're trying to reach out to people, don't just rely on things like email or things like LinkedIn. If there is a telephone number, actually call people, because it's quite daunting, and I think we are very used to, even with family and friends, perhaps saying, oh, well, I don't really want to chat to these people, I'm just going to send them messages or emails. But actually being able to have a conversation with people is really an important life skill as well as business skill. And I think to kind of get over that nervousness of ringing a stranger is a really good use of your time.
Perfect, thank you. And before I move on, I just wanted to mention I've been sent a link, actually. Claire, you mentioned Shortlist Me, and TARGETjobs partnered with Next Step Support, and Shortlist Me also took part, and they're offering 2 practice tests for free. So I'm going to put the link in the questions box. So if anybody does want to look at that and try some interview questions, they can use that link, and I will put that in there in a moment. But I want to move on to the next question, really, which is, we've touched on this, on how important it is to relax and refresh ahead of 2021. And I know you guys have already given some tips already, but I just wanted to ask again, does anybody have any more advice for how students can hit the refresh button before 2021 and also strike a balance between their studying, their applications and relaxing? Jane, do you want to go first for me?
One of the things, again, within teaching is a big concern is that work-life balance. And I think what teachers are very good at doing is taking the Christmas break, because it's absolutely necessary to have that downtime. So if you've got a hobby or a particular interest, keep doing that, and just make sure that you plan in some time to focus on doing that. So if you paint, if you draw, if you exercise, if you enjoy seeing friends, have that planned out in advance, so that is what you're doing, that kind of relaxation activity, as opposed to, oh well, I'll go for a walk, but in the meantime I'll be checking all my emails and things like that. Leave the phone at home, or kind of don't be as accessible in that kind of relaxation time, because that's your me time. That's for you to kind of recuperate, as it were. But I think also by default, I think I'm kind of leave everything to last minute. So if you have got essays or exams or things that are coming up, then do put maybe 30 minutes aside to kind of focus on that, rather than kind of leave it the Sunday night before you go back to university. That kind of little and often is usually the better and more sensible approach for your mental health. But it's easy to say that, and I know that I would be the one kind of up all night on the Sunday before going back, so I don't practice what I preach.
Claire, how about you? Do you have any tips for kind of balancing the multiple demands and switching off when needed?
Yeah, I guess for me, being probably a few generations ahead of the students on this webinar, with 2 children and a dog, that I have to switch off. I guess I'm forced to switch off, although then am I switching off because then I'm trying to focus on their needs. But I would say it's a tough balance, because I find that if I'm proactive early in my approach to applying for opportunities or employability, I can relax, because I find that if I do switch off and I haven't done that assignment, or I haven't yet figured out what my CV is going to look like, it's playing on my mind. And I just feel that having, like Jane said, it's very easy to say be proactive, but at least if you've made a head start, you can truly relax. And I actually endorse everything Jane says in terms of going out for a walk. Take your phone, but don't look at it, or don't take your phone. I mean, I take my phone everywhere with me, but just really don't look at devices sort of late at night, and then your mind's kind of worrying about what's happening. And I just think, just try and make sure that I like the lie-in approach from Sarah, and maybe using 2 till 3 every day as your time to be active with your planning. But I think it's for your mental health, it's absolutely critical. And try and have some fun over Christmas with your family. It may be a virtual quiz, whatever that might look like, but I think that's absolutely important. So yeah, I think they're all great tips that Jane has shared.
Perfect. Yeah, and I can see coming in on the chat box, we've got one student asking, how do you relax? Or somebody's struggling to relax as they have 3 deadlines in January. Joshua, is there anything you'd say to either of those students?
How do I relax? Is that that question? Well, I would say that companies, organizations they're not looking for robots. We're looking for people who are kind of well-rounded, who have hobbies, who have stuff they enjoy doing. So make sure you give that the time that it kind of deserves, I suppose. I very much personally like running, and I find that quite relaxing. So I try to do that most days, particularly after like a horrible day at work when it's been really, really busy. Just going out and getting a little bit of fresh air, I think, does me the world of good anyway. So whatever that is like for you, whatever you actually enjoy doing, what can get your mind off things, don't feel like you're kind of cheating on doing your work, or by doing something that you're genuinely interested in, because it is making you a more rounded person. That's something that employers are looking for as well. So don't feel guilty to use the time to do some fun stuff and stuff that you enjoy and stuff that does relax you anyway.
Perfect. And Sarah, I love your advice on having a lie-in, but is there any advice you'd give to somebody who is struggling to relax?
Yeah, I think it's about knowing yourself. So I know that for me, like, the morning isn't the best time. The thought of, like, on my Christmas break, having to set an alarm and get up and drag myself to sit at a laptop and do some work isn't going to be productive for me. So I think, figure out what works for you. Do you know the days when the times of the day when you're most productive? If that's an evening for you, then don't force yourself to get up and get on it and do it early. And I think the same goes with relaxing. Like, find out what it is for you. Like, self-care is a hot topic at the moment, and I don't find a bath over relaxing. I find it quite boring. So I don't like running like Joshua. I wish I did. I'd be much healthier. But find out what those things are for you, and kind of what tricks work for you, and try different things. It might be that meditation does work for you. It doesn't work for me. It could be that writing stuff down. People often say, like, before you go to bed, write. So try different things out till you figure out kind of a rhythm and pattern that kind of works for you. We're all different. We all have different things. Like, I have become a lockdown cliche and make sourdough bread. I find that really relaxing. I like to read my Sunday paper. I do not want to go on any more walks around a park with nothing else to do apart from walk around. So I think it's just about, be kind to yourself. You can only do what you can do. And I think if the person that mentioned they've got 3 deadlines looming, maybe just sit down. I'm a massive fan of a power hour. Focus for an hour, plan some stuff out. What time of the day you're going to do it, what needs to be done. Like, when you're job hunting, for example, have a spreadsheet of all the things that you're interested in, all of the deadlines, kind of all the information that you've gathered that can just kind of keep you on track. But I would say it's very personal to you. I get a lot of energy from friends and from people, and I know that really kind of helps recharge myself. So I think, what works for you?
No, I think that's really key. It's different for everybody. I mean, my family love it because I seem to have turned into a stress baker, and my friends love it because I've dug out the bingo machine that my parents bought me when I was about 7 years old, and I now run virtual bingo sessions. So it can be anything. It really is true, as long as you enjoy it. That's great. And so I think we'll move into the student questions soon, but give everybody a chance to ask their questions. But I just wanted to finish with kind of a catch-all, and you've all given some great advice, so I hope you've got a little bit more in the reserve. Because I'm going to say, what would be your biggest tip for students over the festive season besides relaxing? And Joshua, could I start with you?
Couldn't give me a minute to think about it, right? Aside from relaxing, I would say, make the most of the fact that everything's online at the moment. Try and attend some of these before you break up for Christmas. Try and attend as many of these different webinars as you can. A lot of employers are going to be doing, and I know we have a lot of virtual versions of these sorts of things as well. So I certainly think over the next couple of weeks before we get to Christmas, try and attend as many of the kind of online different talks and that kind of thing as you can before we get to the festive period. And once we get to the festive period, make sure to relax. Very few employers are going to be posting new jobs in between Christmas and New Year's. So don't feel like you're going to, if you don't look for a couple of days, it's quite unlikely you're going to miss anything in between Christmas and New Year's. I really don't worry. Try, I know you said don't say relax, but try and recharge anyway, and make time for the stuff that you actually enjoy doing.
Don't worry, not advocating not relaxing. I'm just trying to make you all give me something different. Sarah, how about you?
I don't top tip. I think just, what Joshua said. Try and use it a little bit. Be kind to yourself. if you can put yourself in a good position for the new year, then do. If that doesn't work for you, I'm sure you'll, kind of figure it out. Most of these things generally kind of fall into place and kind of play out as they should.
Perfect. And Jane?
I think one of the things that people forget to do is practice for interviews, and it's one thing having a think in your own head about what you would say in terms of questions, but I think it's important to verbalize it, because naturally in an interview situation you are going to be nervous, and that's a good thing because it shows that you care about what it is that you're doing and all of that kind of thing. But I think in order to combat that nerves, if you know what you're going to be saying in regards to examples and what have you, then that's really quite helpful. So you can either do your practice into the mirror at home, or because you're probably going to be with family and friends and people who can actually say, oh well, when you're speaking, you kind of very fidgety, or when you're speaking you're doing a lot of but that kind of thing. To have that feedback is quite useful, so use those nearest and dearest to you to help prepare for any interviews that you may have coming up.
Great. And sorry, Claire, I've left you till last, so you've got to say something different. I'm very sorry.
Well, I would say two things, actually, if I can have two. So firstly, don't worry about the situation you're in today. I think sometimes students over worry about the fact they haven't got recent work experience, and recruiters understand we're in a pandemic. So firstly, please don't stress about that, and just use the other extracurricular experience that you might have that isn't work experience. And I would say just sit and reflect and think about, once you've identified some companies you do want to apply for, just think about what your preparation might look like, and maybe just sit and brainstorm that out, because we do find that the best applications, the best hires are the ones that have tailored their application or tailored their CV to the role. And just maybe just spend that time to just think about, how am I going to stand out versus just applying for a load of opportunities with that one size fits all mentality, and then unfortunately maybe getting a lot of rejection. So I would say just take that time. There's two.
Thank you very much. Two is more than welcome. So now I'm going to move on and ask as many student questions as I possibly can. So first of all, we've got one question that says, what advice do you have for those of us struggling with online learning and motivation? Feel free, anybody, to jump in at this point.
I think it's not just difficult for those who are learning online. I think it's quite tricky putting together the actual content for it to be interesting. But I think, again, a lot of the sessions are recorded, and so therefore little and often don't sit there for the whole hour. You can go make a cup of tea halfway between, and keep a focus on why it is that you're doing this online learning. Ultimately you want to get your degree. You are interested, obviously, through your subject area, but also you can go away and look at other types of media. You can have discussions with peers who are also studying the same kind of thing, and work with the university support services as well, such as the career services or welfare people, that kind of thing, because if you are struggling, it's likely to be another type of reason other than the actual content of what you're learning or the format of what you're learning that is reducing that motivation. So I think if you are finding yourself in a position where you don't want to kind of continue with the learning that you're actually engaging in, then have a look at what the source of that demotivation is, and look at actually finding remedies for that, because I think that is going to be vital as you as a learner, but you as a person as well.
I think it's a great question, and I find my attention span is so short. If I know I have to sit in front of a session for more than 15 minutes, I'm lost, and that's just me. So I think identify when your peak time is to learn, because actually I find at work I'm most productive between 2 and 3 typically. That's my I just had my lunch, I'm quite energized. And you might find there's a certain time of day where you actually absorb more information. I also find that actually doing other things while I'm listening is more engaging. So I can't just sit and watch a screen. I have to sort of be moving around. You know, I might be doing some organising or bits and bobs around the house, but I'm still listening. And I just find that keeps my energy levels going because I'm moving. Whereas I'm sitting still, I end up just sort of having that lull, and that's just really hard to take on new information.
Perfect, thank you. That's really great advice. And Sarah, do you mind if I pitch this one to you first? We've talked about practicing for the questions you're going to be asked at interview, but one student has asked, what are good questions to ask in an interview?
Great question. Yeah, so you would always have a chance to ask your own questions, and asking good questions can kind of just get you another little tick that you really are interested and you're really enthusiastic to be there. And I'm always very surprised when candidates say, no, I don't have any questions. I'm like, you really learn everything you want to know from our website. So I would say questions that's shown you've done your research are great, so maybe you've seen something on our website, maybe you've seen something on our social media, something that's kind of piqued your interest. That's a great one to say, I noticed this, could you tell me more about it? Or kind of just things that you're interested in. If you're going to be joining this team and you're going to be there with them, maybe you want to know more about team structure or how they like it, or the culture. Try to find things that you would really want to know if this is somewhere that you would be accepting an offer. So anything that can kind of show your enthusiasm, that you've done your research as well, are good questions.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. I think interviews and assessment centres are a really good opportunity for you to kind of almost, see if it's a good fit for you, as well as seeing if you're a good fit for the organisation. So use that time when you're able to ask your questions to actually, I don't know, interview the company back a little bit. I think there's no way that you can get everything that you want to find out simply from a kind of one-page job description. So I certainly think it's a good time for you to kind of see if that company's a good fit for you as well. It's hard, I think, simply from looking at the website or reading the job description to understand about the company culture at all. So I think it's a good chance to ask the interviewer why they enjoy working for the organisation, for example, for you to kind of ask anything that you actually want to know. Where can this job actually lead you a couple of years down the line if you're applying for one of the grad roles? What is an example of what a successful graduate has done in the organisation in the past? Stuff that actually will be hopefully quite interesting and and quite useful for you. I think it is sometimes quite obvious when a student has kind of pre-prepared all their questions for stuff that they already kind of know, just to show they've done their research a little bit. I think that happens quite frequently, and I think it sometimes is a little bit transparent, but certainly use that time, use that opportunity to interview the company a little bit and find out why they think that you should choose to work there over whatever else you're applying and whatever kind of competitor organizations you might be applying or looking at working for as well. And I think, that sort of change in mentality might make you a little less nervous as well.
Yeah, I was going to, just echo everything that everyone said, really. This is your time to identify whether this is where you want to work, as well as whether the recruiter wanting to hire you. And we always say, I mean, from our process, you have the opportunity to still go and visit one of our locations. And I just say, it's just a great opportunity for you to get a feel for the culture, ask questions. And if you aren't, it just makes us think, well, are you really interested in working for us? Is this somewhere you genuinely really want to come and work? So it does pose questions if you don't have any questions to ask. And the questions you ask really show where your focus lies. So it could be, can you talk to me about the development opportunities within your organisation, or realistically, where can I get promoted to, and will I have a mentor? And you know, it's really indicative of what your interests are as a candidate in the organisation. So I echo that.
Likewise, I think one of the questions that a friend secured their jobs with was they've done a very, very thorough investigation into the employer, and they had found out that the hash browns in the canteen cost 23p, which he found an absolutely bizarre cost. So he asked that, which made him stand out in terms of other people being interviewed, as well as things like, how will my success be measured over a period of time? What kinds of opportunities would I have within the next 6 to 12 months in terms of progression or development, as well as all the other kind of really good questions that people have suggested. So I think it is quite useful perhaps to have something that is quite quirky, but also that will allow you to stand out, but also have something that's going to demonstrate that you actually do know what you're trying to get yourself into.
Yeah, I think knowing the cost of the hash browns definitely suggests some good research skills. That's fantastic. I'm gonna remember that for a while, I think. We've had another student ask, is December a slow recruiting season? Is it more worthwhile applying for jobs this month or in the new year?
Can I just answer that question? I think naturally the team will slow down over Christmas because of the break, and we do see a lot of people off between Christmas and New Year. What I would say is we've seen a huge volume of applications for particularly our placement opportunities, and to the point where we may close down some of those opportunities because of the volume. So I would say the sooner the better, to kind of ensure that your name's in the hat and you've applied, because the last thing you'd want to do is necessarily look into the new year and then find that the opportunity has already been filled. Now that's just our opportunities. Other organisations will work differently. We do recruit all year round and it's ongoing, but you just wouldn't want to regret by waiting too long. That's all I'm saying. So
great. Sarah or Josh in particular, do you echo that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in applying, I would say don't delay. Get your interview application in. It might be a slower response time, but it's definitely there, and it will be reviewed by us, obviously, when we are available to do so. So I would say, prepare your application, have it ready to go, and have it the best application that you can. But I wouldn't wait to click submit.
Perfect, thank you very much. And then another question we've had is there any advice for people who graduated in September 2020 and they're now job seeking in the winter months?
go on, Josh.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we don't have any limits on the number of years or whether you've graduated or anything after you finish university. So certainly would be eligible to apply for the graduate programs, certainly with us, but I'm sure other organisations as well. Where they might, I guess, stand out from people who are in their final year, I suppose, is being able to start a little bit sooner and being able to start straight away. I know a lot of universities also provide you access to your career service, and you can attend career service events, talk to them, get tips from those the people who work at the universities as well. So even if you have already finished uni, already graduated, certainly you can still make the most of that, and I definitely would encourage you to do so.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly what Josh has just said. We don't have, don't have to be a graduate of 2021 to apply for our summer start jobs, and we have jobs that are available right now. So same advice applies, really, that we've talked about during this session, applies to a graduate of 2020. You may have just happened to have been able to enhance your application with a few more bits of experience, so it could make you a very well-rounded candidate. So yeah, just same advice applies, really, from my perspective.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe a couple more. So the next one is, somebody has asked if you have any advice for someone who is terrible at psychometric tests, maybe if there's something they could do over the festive season to work on that.
Practice. Yeah, so it depends obviously on what the psychometric test is for the process, but practice. You'll be able to find free tests online. So my advice would be get on the internet, find some, and do them. So for example, for Deutsche Bank, we have a situational judgment test. Our test provider is SHL. You can go to SHL's website and see some practice tests, which would just give you an insight into kind of what to expect. So I would say definitely practice, 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 practice.
We don't have psychometric testing, so I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, but absolutely practice, I would say, if you had to do a psychometric test.
Yeah, we again mirror that. We use an organisation called CAP, CAPP, and they've got a bunch of different practice questions, practice tests on their website as well. So I definitely recommend having a look at that. Our online tests are all based around the GSK values as well. So do make sure you read up on those. If you know what we're looking for, it makes it a lot easier. And I'm sure the same is true for other organisations when they're using those sort of tests. But I definitely would recommend you to have a look at the GSK website. We've got an extensive amount about the values and expectations of the organisation. And that is really what we're looking for with those online tests. So make sure to read up on them before taking it, and you do much better.
Perfect. And just to kind of echo the practice, for any students who are interested in working on their psychometric testing skills, on TARGETjobs, we have a tool called the Graduate Benchmark, and you can sit 3 practice tests: numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, and inductive reasoning. And you'll get a personalised report at the end showing how you did. It compares you to some peers who've also taken the test. You'll be able to apply filters and kind of get an idea of what you might want to practice a little bit more once you've sat the test. And I think we should have time to fit in one more question. So I've got, how long should we spend on one application? And is reusing parts of an answer from previous applications a bad idea?
So I would say, so in terms of how long you should spend on an application, it's a very hard one to answer because it depends how you work, what stage you're at, if you've already started thinking about your applications and already have your CV ready to go. And I think it kind of goes back to being strategic about where you want to apply, thinking about kind of what's going to be most relevant, and kind of focusing on some of those applications rather than applying to anything and everything and not making it tailored. And then in terms of how long you should spend copy, I would be very careful with copy and pasting, just because you would be amazed at how many people. So for us, you have to submit a cover letter. How many people have spelt Deutsche Bank wrong throughout the whole thing, or copy and pasted? So it even will say like X's where they've meant to change one bit but haven't changed it, or put the wrong name of the wrong company on there and submitted it off. So I would say, be very careful when doing that. The only time it might be relevant is, for example, if you, for a cover letter, that a lot of the roles you're applying for do require the same skills. It might be that you're able to kind of talk about a skill in the same kind of way. So that you love technology, and you've kind of written a great example of where you've used tech. It might be that you might be able to kind of weave that example into that application. But I would be very cautious about just kind of copy and pasting, because it's amazing how many applications we get that haven't been checked. So definitely, be cautious if you are going to do that. You also want to be tailoring it to the opportunity. So if you are just copy and pasting everything, you're submitting the same thing for everything, which isn't going to put you in the best light. So I would say be cautious of doing that, but there could be instances where you might be able to reuse some of that content. And then I would say make sure you're getting a second set of eyes on it. So you've got someone, whether it's a flatmate or a family member or the career service or somebody, to read over and check that it doesn't look, it kind of flows with what you've written and it doesn't look like you've just kind of dumped it in there with other things. If that makes sense.
Perfect sense. Thank you very much. And I believe, sadly, that's almost our time up. So I just wanted to take the last minute really to say a big thank you to Joshua, Sarah, Jane and Claire for joining us and for talking to me, answering all of the questions. I think you've all given some brilliant tips for what students can be getting up to in the next 3 weeks to really give themselves the advantage going into 2021. So thank you again. I'm sure all the students would be saying thank you as well if they could, but they can post thank you in the chat box if they want to. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you and have a good evening all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.